Wasn't that sexy?
What was that? Wasn't that
sexy?
very sexy? I love the intro.
The countdown from 30. People, we're live. We've got our live viewership of one user, one viewer. Cool. Okay, comment section. Over to you, Helena.
Thank you, David. Okay, so welcome everyone. We're going to look at the 4 dialogic actions today, and we're going to look at how they play out in a dialogue. And we're going to look at how triggers might push us towards one or the other. We'll start with a check-in, and then we'll do a short dialogue between all of us, just looking at what's sitting with us from last week, or did something come up for us in the week that we would like to bring to the container. Then we'll very briefly just look at the theory around move, oppose, follow, and bystand, and how it relates to triggers. And then we'll see with that knowledge, what have we noticed? What do we notice? And then we'll have a short dialogue on that, and then we'll check out. So that's the map. Having said all of that, I'll tell you in my check-in some more about me, which I know this is why you're all here. You want to know about me? Okay, no, seriously. So the check-in, we've got 3 questions. The first is there something you would like to put down in order to be as present as you can today? The second question is there something you can't put down, but that you would like the group to know about and to hold as a group? And the third question is, what is your gift that you bring, a value or an essence or a quality that you would like to gift the group with for today? So what is it that you want to put down? What is it that you would like to put down, but you know you're not going to be able to, and you just want the group to know about? And thirdly, what is it that you bring to the container, a quality or a value or an essence? So I'll start just to model it. So I'm really tired. I haven't slept for 3 nights, and last night was particularly intense. So I get very controlling and insecure when I haven't slept. So I'm going to put that down. And here's Gaia. Gaia, love man. Hello. We can't hear you.
Hello, Helena, and everybody. You can't hear me. Why not?
I can hear you now. I can hear you. So we're just checking in, Gaia. I'm about to start. So the 3 questions are, what would you like to put down to be fully present? What might you want to put down, but you know you're not going to be able to, and you would just like everyone to know about it? And the third one is, what quality or value or gift would you like to bring into the container today? And I was just about to check in just to model it. So what I was saying is really tired today, didn't sleep last night. So what I would like to put down is the kind of control and insecurity that comes for me with that. So I'm just really going to keep my eye on everyone's faces, because that's what grounds me. What I would like to put down, but don't know if I'll be able to, is I'm trying to hold everything that we need to do in my head, which at this point in time is a difficult endeavor, because my head's not holding a lot. So I just want everyone to be aware of that. I might need to slow down at certain stages. I might need to just check in with my agenda, check in with the group. So I'd like the group to know about that. What do I bring? What do I bring? Let's just check it. I am going to go with joyful surrender. So I'm just going to toss it all up in the air and say it's going to be fine. And I trust everyone here, and I'm excited to see what comes out. So with that, I'm in. So next,
So Helena, nominate someone because I'm muting
Okay.
people just for the background
Okay.
noise.
I'm going to nominate Tandy.
Good thing, because I was ready. I have put aside a whole bunch of workshops and things that I am running this week, and I've put them over there for the next hour and a half. I have a feeling I'm not going to be able to put down my longing for some nicotine and might have to roll a little cigarette here while we're in our session. And I'm bringing with me curiosity and an open heart. Thank you. And I'm going to nominate you, Tia.
Thank you. Lovely to see you. What would I be putting down today? Actually, let me check in first. Yeah, I'm also carrying a little bit of fatigue this morning. It's now 7:30 in UK. I was up at the crack of dawn. What am I going to put down? I think the busyness. Yeah, all the things that I need to do today to be present with you guys today. My gifts. I think a lot of love. I'm also very curious to how this all pans out. I think also besides a lot of love, my neutralness. Yeah, and the ability to listen. Getting better at it. So I nominate Gaia.
There you go. I'm magically unmuted. Thank you, Tia. So what am I going to put down? I'll put down anything that's happened earlier today. The rain on the roof is a bit noisy, but I can put that down. I think the next question was what would I like to put down, but maybe I can't? Is that right, Helena? Okay. What would I like to put down, but maybe I can't? Maybe a sense of self-consciousness from time to time. And what do I bring? I bring happiness, groundedness, and a curiosity to see where we go today. And I shall pass it to Emma.
Okay. Hi, I'm Emma, and I am checking in with Joy. What I'd like to put down, and what I'm having difficulty putting down, is just a very busy, distracted mind. My distracted mind gets in the way of me being fully present because I'm kind of thinking future. I'm just my mind is elsewhere, so I have to really focus on staying present. What I bring today is a genuine curiosity and also a kind of a real interest in the other people who are here and getting to know them better. Seeing how other people's minds work. Thanks. Oh, I nominate Bongile.
Yeah. What I want to put down is my thoughts about money and business and my entrepreneurial life for now, as it keeps my mind too busy and there's a lot of anxiety attributed by that space. What I won't be able to put down, yeah, it's my curiosity. What I bring here, the gifts, is leadership and healing. If there's any healing that must take place, well, that I'm in, yeah. Dafita.
Okay, so I'm going to try and put down my anxiety around controlling the stream and the container and all the voices and the sounds and everything. What I can't put down is that. So I'm going to try and stay present while that's happening. What I bring to the container is my willingness to try and do good in the world by bringing people together to teach skills that create sustainable change. That sounds like quite a nice thing. So there's a willingness to do that. So I push through my own fear of kind of getting it wrong and getting criticized to actually just fucking show up and try and do the best I can with what I've got. So I bring my magician to the container that makes shit happen with fuck all, and it's pretty fucking. It's quite a good magician, I'll tell you that much. Even with the most honesty and humility, it is pretty good the way that I just kind of continuously show up and just try and try and try. So I'm going to pat myself on the back for that. And blessings to you, Helena, for doing this. And congratulations on your engagement, Emma. So those are the two blessings that I wanted to put down and get out there, so I can just kind of relax and play in the background here and just see what happens. So thank you. Back to you, Helena. Are you able to unmute yourselves?
Yes.
Okay. So that'll relieve take the pressure off me to try and unmute you when you want to talk. But if you unmute yourselves and you start talking, you stop talking, you forget to mute yourselves, I'm going to come in and mute you. Don't take it personally. Okay, I'm in with all of that. Thanks.
Thank you, David. I just really want to honor that everyone showed up today. And I want to honor, David, that you have made this magic and helped me to bring my magic to make things happen. It's really cool for me. I'm really enjoying it. And woohoo, Emma! Congratulations. So I'm going to invite us just to very briefly land in our bodies, in our minds, in our chair, wherever we feel comfortable. And then we're just going to go into a brief little open discussion, just to feel into what's sitting with us now, possibly about our session last week. But if there's nothing still sitting with you, or if you weren't in the session last week, just bring whatever feels like it needs to be spoken. And the reason why I'm doing it this way is we can then have the conversation, so we've got something to reflect on when we look at the 4 dialogic actions. So it's going to be a short one, 10 minutes. So with that said, just taking a moment, you can keep your eyes open or closed. If you feel more comfortable meditating with knowing that you're live, you can stop your camera. I'm just starting by really feeling whatever you are sitting on. Just feeling the weight of your body and feeling the surface where your body meets what you're sitting on. And just taking a deep breath in and out. And just resting into that. Just resting into that what is the conditional holding? The chair isn't thinking, oh my word, here she's sitting or he's sitting on me again. So just enjoying something, just holding you with no expectations of you giving anything back. And then just becoming aware of your breath. Breath follows you. Just noticing if it's an easy breath or a jerky breath, fast or slow. And then just briefly bringing attention to your hands, what they're resting on. Taking a moment to just feel what your hands feel like to you. You could feel into the palms and the back of your hands. See if there's a difference. And then similarly your feet. Just noticing the difference between where your feet rest on the ground and the tops of your feet. And then just gently scanning up the legs, through the hips, up through the torso. And then just momentarily just resting in the face. Noticing what's your jaw up to. What's happening with your eyes. And then we're going to go into the body just using the breath. So noticing the breath might be going in through your nose or through your mouth and just following it as it travels through the throat, through the chest, into the stomach and below. And just taking 3 breaths. Just noticing the sensation in the body might increase or decrease as you breathe, and just being aware of it. And then lastly, just putting your hand on your heart and bringing to mind something or someone that makes you smile. It can be a person, an animal, it can even be a funny story or something you saw. And just for a moment, just breathing into that. And then just once again becoming aware of your feet on the ground, if they are on the ground. Becoming aware of what you're sitting on. Becoming aware of the noises in the environment or the sounds around you. And then maybe just rubbing your hands together, wiggling your toes, moving the shoulders up and down a couple of times, moving the head if you want to, just gently though. And then when you're ready, just opening your eyes. Oh yes, Tandy, and maybe having a little stretch. Okay. So, just checking in with yourself. Maybe just seeing what do you still hold from last week, or what would you like to bring into the container right now, or speak or have a dialogue about. And we're going to take our time and just We've got 15 minutes. I'll keep an eye on the time.
It's that beautiful looking at each other moment that we all know. I'll just break the silence around that. Well, not just because I want to break the silence, but what I did realize this week, it was so much easier to get on this StreamYard. It was so frustrating for me last week with the internet not working, which was completely out of my control. So that's nice. That's really nice this week. So yeah, that's all I've got on that. So thanks, guys.
Helena, thank you for your generosity and letting me join in a week late.
Can I just test? Can you guys hear me? Oh, cool. All right.
And then I have a query around something that I've been sitting with.
Tandy, I can't hear you.
And now? Can you hear me now?
I can hear Tandy.
I'm still speaking. Can you hear me yet, David? And Tia, I can see that Emma can hear me and Helena can hear me. Tia's got me, Gaia's got me, Bongila's got me. Okay. I have a query that I've been sitting with and haven't resolved yet around check-in and also around the presencing activity. Sometimes what I want to do is to not check in first, but to start with a presencing activity. And I'll throw out some of the things around that. One part for me is that immediately makes sure that whatever we bring, if we do a presencing activity before we check in, means that we're very present with whatever we're checking in with. The other concern is that if we do the kind of a presencing activity before we do the check-in, that we dismiss or sublimate anything else that might be coming up. And so that's a query I've been sitting with that I'd like to put out there.
So I'm going to follow on that. Just first, can I check, David? Can you hear me? So just for today, I usually like to start with the kind of presencing exercise or the meditation or the body check-in or whatever you want to call it, because it helps me land. The reason I didn't start with it today is I forgot because I'm tired. So I'm just going to put that in there. Sometimes stuff happens for no particular reason.
So I'm used to speaking. I'm used to being expected to speak. And so I'm consciously holding back to create that gap there to see if something else will come in. Because I've got lots of things I can talk about. And I guess one of the things would be the kind of expectation or the norm for me to speak. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, I can relate to that, David, and I'm in more of a listening mood today than a speaking mood. Quite like, I mean, I've got quite a lot of background noise here, so I've got to really concentrate. There's a lot of good rain falling, which is great. We need it. I noticed that something else I was carrying just now was actually the frustration I had today trying to get on through Safari. I didn't know this software doesn't run on Safari or something, or I hadn't used my iPad before. But yeah, I'm happy to sit back and do a bit of observing today more than talking. That's all I've got.
Yeah. Hello. Can you hear me? Okay. I think mine is also on the tip. Just allowing the process to take place and allowing you to lead us, Helena. And yeah, it's basically that. Yeah. In my mind, today I experienced a few things. I was listening to some beautiful talk by some old actor, John Canny. And basically after yesterday, I was interviewed by some guy called, he's also a big actor, Selomake Kanyube. He's doing some father and son talk, speaking to wounds and how most men carry, there's a common wound amongst men of not being good enough, you know, which leads in most cases to gender-based violence, and especially in Black communities, and where like now after COVID, a lot of people are unemployed, and there are so many cases of violence and abuse in households. So this old man gave us a different perspective to that. I think in that video that I watched, talking about human rights and all that, as one of the contributing factors for us to be in this position as a country now. That's an interesting perspective. So just thought I must throw that in the circle. Yeah. But I'm here to be led. Yeah. Aho.
I think what I'm thinking about this morning, and I have been thinking about recently in this past week, is how I tend to escape. So it's sort of self-abandonment. I tend to kind of escape truly connecting with myself by running into thinking and thoughts. And it was just pointed out to me that it's part of an addiction for me. I escape into thinking to avoid just being in my body and being properly present with myself. So that's what I've been thinking about the last few days.
Okay, fuck it. I can't keep quiet. So I was in a circle yesterday, yeah, and it was a men's circle, and there was a Shona man and a Muslim man that spoke about gender-based violence, how they were abused by their wives. And it's really is a subject that really was ultra taboo. The subject that really never gets a voice. Yeah. And there were two stereotypes that were broken for me there. One is that the kind of gender-based violence of woman on man, and then the second one is that black men don't get abused by their wives. Just to kind of really, it's like the words that were coming out were things like, "In my culture, this shouldn't happen," which I kind of went, "What do you mean, fuck it, in your culture? Like this happens in all cultures, and yeah." So now I'll keep quiet. For about a minute.
So I'll speak what's happening for me. A part of me is like really fascinated with this gender-based violence, with this idea of violence of women on men, because I've seen it in my culture as well. A part of me is really sitting with Emma as well, because I can really relate to what you're saying about thinking. Kind of analytical part of my brain's like wanting to spin a fantasy or a story about, how can I relate what Emma's saying to what David and Bongile brought? And then there's even like a small part of my mind that's thinking, interesting, both Tia and Gaia had problems getting online. So there's this anxiety like, which thread do I follow? And that's what's sitting with me right now.
Who decides which thread?
You mean which one of my golems? Or my inner golems, or which one of the group? It's a question, David. When you say who decides.
Yeah. Do I get to answer the question?
Yes.
Okay. If I get to answer the question, then I get the power, and I say, well, let's go down this thread.
Well, why don't you suggest this thread and let's see what everybody.
No, I'm not going to suggest a thread, because that just puts me up in the position of the white straight male that kind of decides where it's going.
But now you're introducing another hot thread, David.
No, I introduced that thread in the very beginning where I said I was going to keep quiet, but nothing was happening. And so I feel compelled to jump in and make something happen. Which is a underprivilege.
I feel compelled to follow on that, so I'm going to consciously put it down and ask somebody else to speak to what David was saying. We've got 5 minutes.
Yeah, I just heard David when you were speaking to something not happening that you felt compelled to step in. Yeah, I felt like there was a projection there of when it's not maybe spoken about. Maybe my interpretation is that you see it as nothing happening. For me, when I was experiencing some silence, there was quite a lot happening, So, and I guess I'm also projecting that silence of something happening to you and you vice versa, which is quite beautiful. And so, yeah, when you put that ahead, it was also nice to just see the white straight man standing up again. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, nice being here.
Can you guys still hear me? I had to switch to my headphones. Okay. So the assumption in my role is as somebody that's helping to put this together and be supportive of that, there's a sense of duty that I have to kind of be driving and pushing this in a way. Yeah. If I don't do anything, there's an anxiety that comes up for me that says I'm being remiss in my role.
There are two things that have been coming up for me. One is, David, that I have absolutely no expectation that you are supposed to be speaking at any point in time, or that you have to keep yourself quiet. The other is reflecting back on both, David, your comment, and Bongile, your comment. And what came up for me was a recent realization or understanding that in my ancestral lineage, the females in my lineage are quite strong and they show up a lot, and have kind of dismissed the men from my lineage. And in recent kind of reflection, have realized how much they were wounded. Both of them were, my grandfathers were both in the war, in World War II. One was a prisoner of war. And realizing how much that there wasn't space for them to bring their wounding and their to the fore, and how that's impacted on my family over time.
I can follow that. It's similar in my family.
Yeah, just connecting to that. I think in my family, there's also that the feminine energy in my space does not give space for masculine presence, and yes, and added to that is the fact that my masculine energy didn't even have space outside of my home. I see it in my brother and other men in my communities, other black men specifically. that that I connect very well with what David is saying, because normally I see it even in my circles, that a white males or white men will just step up and want to assume the position, because it has always been like that. For me as a black man that got some education and was exposed, I find myself stepping up a lot, and in my black masculine energy, and to a point that sometimes I don't get good reception when that happens, whether it's from my feminine energy, from my family, and from the white communities that I interact with in my life. And yeah, just stepping up, so that every time that happens, why I step up, I have joy that I'm doing it. But again, that comes back where I need to almost be in check, yeah. So yeah, that's what comes up for me from the discussion.
Thank you. So I'm going to pause us. We're going to carry on with this discussion. I'm just going to pause us to now bring the 4 actions in, so that we've got a better sense of what's happening at the moment, and also, do we want to change it? And if we do, what are the ways in which we can do it? Before we do that, next week we'll look at the physiological triggers, the way that it shows up for each of us. So I can feel myself, I'm definitely triggered by various things, partly by the content of what we're talking about, partly about this pull between moving and saying something and holding back. And it's causing tension. So I'm just going to invite all of us, once again, we're just going to do a very brief check-in with ourselves. If you want to mute your camera while we do so, please do so. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is just check in with yourself and see, are you triggered? The way you could diagnose this is there might be tightness in your body, solar plexus, jaw, face, head is often a place that tension shows up, or at the bottom of the stomach. So just taking a moment and just checking what's happening with your body in whatever way you're comfortable with. Is there tightness anywhere? Is there locking, like a holding? Another way would be the breath. When we regress to our past, the first thing we do, which is what we do when we're no longer present, is we hold our breath. And that comes from, as a child, something happens, and there's this belief that if we can hold our breath and lock our bodies, we can stop whatever happens from happening, because we're still very identified with our environment. We believe that we and our environment is one thing. So as an adult, whenever we're triggered, that might show up. So you might lock your body, hold your breath. And the other thing is the thoughts. Like Emma mentioned earlier, we could go completely into our heads and we start having a conversation with ourselves. We're no longer seeing the other people. We're now talking in our mind with ourselves, or our thoughts might be going crazy, trying to come up with different ways of responding to what's happening. So if any of that stuff is happening for you, maybe just a simple thing to do is just name it to yourself. If you're with people that you trust, you can also name it to the group if it feels appropriate in that moment. So just saying, right now I'm triggered, and I'm just simply naming it. I'm dropping the story. I don't have to explain why I'm triggered. I don't have to make sense of it to myself or to the others. Just for the next minute, I can just say I'm triggered, and I know it because my breath is not flowing smoothly, my mind is going a bit nuts. My body might be tight. And then what we do is we just give ourselves permission, which we so rarely do, is just to be with it. Just really allow yourself the luxury, 30 seconds of just noticing what's happening with you right now without needing to change it. Coming at it curiously. Oh, that's interesting. My one eyeball feels tighter than the other one, or whatever. So just stay there for a moment and just notice what's happening for you. And then knowing you can always return back to the space later, you're just going to end by a very effective way to untrigger is to activate the heart, because the heart activates a different part of the nervous system. So just placing your hand on your heart, if you feel comfortable doing so. Just noticing the pressure of the hand on the heart. And then just bringing to mind someone or something you care about. And just breathing into that. And noticing if it's hard to do that, that's okay. Just bring that image of that person or that thing back to your consciousness. And now bringing to mind someone or something that makes you smile, which could be the same person, could be another person. And then lastly, just appreciating something about yourself. Could be something about yourself that makes you smile. It could just be something that you really like and appreciate about yourself. And then just taking another deep breath in. And then becoming aware of sounds around you. It's a way of bringing you back. Noticing what you're sitting on. And then when you're ready, just opening your eyes. Okay, so let's see how I'm doing for time. Okay, so we're just going to briefly look at the 4 dialogic actions, and we're going to go into these in more detail later. So there will be a deeper understanding with them as we go along. For now, it's just really introducing them. So the 4 actions are move. Now, move would be what David brought when he introduced a topic, or what Bongile brought when he introduced a topic. It would be bringing something new into the container. It would be what Emma brought when she talked about thoughts, as opposed to being with the body sensation. Follow would be if somebody in the group agrees with you and says, I want to be having this conversation. I'm going to follow you. So when I said I can relate to what you're saying, that would be a very basic way of following what somebody's saying. Now, if somebody brings a move and nobody's prepared to follow it, that dialogue's not going to happen. So for any move to develop into something more, somebody needs to follow it. Somebody needs to agree. In the example I sent, if you want to have a meeting and you say, I want to have a meeting, somebody else has got to say, me too. Otherwise, it's not going to be a meeting. So that would be follow. Oppose would be when Bongile said to David, I don't agree with what you're saying. when you say that nothing was happening in the container. And that was a very beautiful way of opposing. And because Bongile said why he doesn't agree. Oppose can also show up as you're wrong, that's nonsense, I don't want to talk about this, whatever. But it's basically somebody moves and then somebody else goes, I don't agree. And it can either happen in the way that Bongile brought it, which is, I don't agree, and here is why, which is generally creates a more healthy dialogue, or it can just be someone saying, that's bullshit. And you can see, I'm sure, the difference that it could make to dialogue. And I'm going to leave with oppose just by saying that oppose is very healthy. To really deepen dialogue, we've got to be able to speak if there's an ambiguity or something that doesn't fit well. The last part of the actions, the fourth one, would be bystand. A bystand is usually that person that sits quietly and observes. So the bystander is noticing. They're noticing the different threads, they're noticing the different reactions within a group. It only becomes a bystand dialogically, though, if you're able to voice it. So when I said, I'm noticing that this and this and this and this is being said, and this is how I'm reacting to it, that would be a classic bystand. Or I'm noticing that Gaia hasn't said anything. I'm aware that he said he wanted to think about it, but I'm curious if he wants to say something. So that would be speaking, a bystand. You're noticing rather than moving a new idea, following somebody else, opposing what somebody's saying. So with that being said, the last little piece I want to bring before we go into either deepening our dialogue or talking about what I'm bringing now, or maybe combining the two, that was a long sentence, is this idea around triggers. So I was actually at a UACT training and the conversation got really heated when I noticing that it was very difficult for me to move. It was very difficult for me to say anything. There was a fear in me, and I became aware that when I go into fear, I bystand. And with the amygdala, when we triggered, we usually go back to the last memory that we have of a similar situation to see whether we should go into fight or flight. And when I go into bystand, what I notice at that time is I would remember the times when I have moved and it was badly received. So in that moment, I'll choose to freeze. It feels safer. I'd rather take the risk of the conversation going nowhere rather than putting myself out there and then having to re-experience the shame that I remember myself experiencing the last time. My other way of reacting rather than responding is oppose. Now this happens the other way around. Somebody says something, it triggers me. I remember the last time I let somebody get away with saying something hurtful to me. And I believe I have a sacred duty to myself and the group to blast that person out of the water. So I will oppose. I won't move. I rarely follow. I don't feel safe in either of those two roles, but bystand, not going to say anything, not worth it, or oppose, I can get away with it. This person's really pissing me off, and I will often convince myself that I owe it to the group to speak up. So with that, that's kind of just a very brief introduction. If anyone's got any questions or any comments before we go into the last half an hour, and we just continue our dialogue or share what's happening for us now. So we dialogue about this. Any questions?
Hi, Helena. I think it would be nice, those points that you were talking to earlier, just make notes on them in that point form on the chat, just to get maybe in my mind. I'm sure someone will also share my sentiment. Working, yeah.
Thank you. I'll do so now.
Well, I'm busy bystanding.
What are you noticing while you're bystanding, David?
That there's another conversation happening in the chat, which is the private chat, which isn't happening in the stream chat.
I also noticed that, David. But what was quite interesting for me today was I went into total bystand today. Normally I follow, and it feels quite nice to actually just to observe. And what I'm observing is that we all have such beautiful opinions. But I found it really, really interesting for me to just zip it a little bit, you know, and to go into more of observing, listening role, which is quite unusual, but it feels quite nice. I think I'm a bit talked out, to say the truth, but I'm still participating through that, you know. But I'm very interested to what the private chat was. That I noticed that too, a lot of laughter. And maybe no one's going to share it with us, David. So yeah, interesting times.
I have a question for you, Helena. I just want some clarification. I think I tend to bystand often in a group conversation, and I think what I'm hearing you say is that there's a connection between that and someone who's and me as my what I tend to do when I'm triggered is freeze. So I'm interested in the connection between propensity to bystand in conversations and freeze in a trigger. Are you saying that they're connected?
I'm saying that for me, they're connected.
Okay.
And usually the way you would notice a bystand could potentially be a freeze is if you don't say what you're noticing.
Okay.
So there's a difference between a bit of post-traumatic stress disorder where you're watching the group almost hyper alert to make sure of the group dynamic so you can get out if need be or react appropriately. That would be different from watching what's happening in the group from a soft, open space where at a certain stage you'll remark, I'm noticing that there's another conversation going on. It's quite different from just sitting and noticing it but not saying anything. And that's how I tell the difference with myself.
Yeah, I'm noticing that I've certainly been enjoying not talking much. I was feeling the same. I've talked a lot today. There's been quite a lot of talking going on, but it doesn't. Yeah, it certainly doesn't feel as if I'm not still a part of the container, and I am feeling a sense of just getting a feeling for this new group, this new container, getting an understanding of what we're doing here. You know, some of you I've been doing work with regularly. David, I haven't seen you for ages. Bonjili, I'm just getting to know you. So I think I'm doing a bit of that as well in my bystanding, just getting an assessment of how I'm feeling in the container. And I enjoy being able to do that from a place of silence, but also being able to acknowledge that I'm doing it consciously. And with awareness, and for others to know that that's what's going on.
Okay,
So
for
I'm
me, looking at all these points, because I always engage, I always engage and follow, oppose, and not bystand. When I find myself, when I want to bystand and listen, I find that people will normally see me to not be present, and whereas I'll be there present. And I think it speaks to something that, I mean, I spoke to that David was alluding to earlier regarding something not happening. Because when it's not happening, it's when my mind is really engaging, And I think that's what comes up for me. In most places, I'm well engaged, but I tend to also do what Emma and you, Helena, what you do, where you just chat sometimes. But sometimes I will be frozen but present. you I'm frozen, present, and maybe anxious that I'm letting this thing go and where I could add value. And that's a beautiful thing about dialogue, that you going down knowing, or I go down knowing, that I made a decision to not engage.
So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to bystand with a potential move. So I'm going to say that I'm noticing that there is silence. I'm noticing that within myself, I'm not quite sure whether that silence is a comfortable or uncomfortable one, and that's causing me anxiety. And today, I'm wanting to move, partly because David was voicing earlier, I feel like it's my responsibility or my role to keep this thing rolling. So I just want to give that observation voice. And then the potential move is, I think what we're saying now deeply relates to what Bongile and David brought about gender-based violence. And I'm curious if we as a group could deepen it, knowing we've got 15 minutes left. But I'm also curious if there's something else that needs to be said by the group that I might now be sweeping under the carpet because of my anxiety of feeling like I need to move things along. And I could go on and on, but I'm not going to. I'm going to pause it, and I'm going to wait for 3 turns before I even allow myself to think of speaking again.
I'll follow you.
Yeah, I'm happy to go down that track. Right.
I'm also interested in that track, and also interested how little little space there is for dialogue around these things, how there's no space for move or following or opposing, how so many conversations just get shut down, and so that we can't have discussions about these things. So I think it's an important one.
So do we only move when everyone agrees? Because I saw Bongile raise his finger, which was an indication of, yeah, he's happy with it. Guy then jumped in and said he's happy. Tandi then says, yes, she's interested to go down there. There's Emma's finger. Helena's abdicated for 3 rounds and is putting the work on us. Yeah. And I'm just curious, like, does everyone have to kind of say, okay, we're going down this path, or do you just kind of sit around? 5
I
out
think
of,
we no, go.
well, I mean, is it like 5 out of 6 decide? Yeah. Is it like the majority say we're going down here? Or do we all turn around and say, okay, Tia, what is it that you want for us to talk about?
And I'd say I'm happy to go with Bongile. So I would just be following. Yeah.
On a technical Bongile, I can't bear it. Sorry, I'm gonna just suspend this. I just want to answer David. So David, no, there's no rule. It's a check in with yourself and see like where are you coming from, and it's the same for the rest of the group. So anyone can go at any time. And now,
I think for me, it is so beautiful, the dialogue method, because it just lays the agenda, about different things that are happening within us. That if you really want to engage with that, to create another circle of discussion, or where you can bite each other's heads off, But this one, you're sitting there and you're like, yeah, it's because it's so beautiful that, and it teaches us patience. Because for me, I've been patiently sitting here and listening to the silence, or to the loudness of the silence. That I don't think we are not. I think we are not gifted with that, because you're always compelled to respond to what is happening and give your view, and which is why I strongly believe in this method for nation building, because it's not giving space for conflict, or for immediate response.
I don't see how sitting around in silence is going to help nation building, though. I mean, this is what the frustration that comes up for me. It's like, I want to fucking always go, come guys, let's do something, let's do something, let's do something. So I create something and then it gets undermined. That's what the feeling is. The message I get is, oh, well, you never included us. We weren't part of the decision making. We weren't. There's always in many different places that I see this, and then I get frustrated. Yeah, and then I get triggered, and then I think. So kind of sitting around here in silence is it fucking triggers me in a way that's like, well, this is a waste of my time.
I think the reason that I say it's now we're going to discussion, which is that I say it lays the ground nicely. There'll always be a platform maybe after this where people can, after a dialogue, where people can engage on issues that started in dialogue, you know, but in dialogue, it is just to simmer, to sit there and say, to lay the ground on 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 banning issues, you know. Like, I mean, as a country right now, there's so much that I want to talk about, you know, and then I think a lot of people that are in South Africa want to talk about, but there aren't places where it can be ventilated without a direct response. Everywhere we go in different platforms, it's like I say this, someone will counter it, and then we are counter. We'll always counter arguments, you know. Sometimes when they are laid down there, it just gives me this feeling that you are feeling now, David, this anxiety. But later on, you'll be able to engage with it differently, and maybe have an input, a constructive input in another circle.
I want to throw in something in that I think that sometimes we don't give us enough space for both for listening and for integrating. Sometimes we're so busy moving forward with action that we don't allow, and in that, sometimes what can happen is one person's agenda will lead the way. And that sometimes I think it's incredibly valuable to sit with the silence and allow, because in that space of silence, something else can sometimes emerge.
So two things are coming up for me. No, more than two. So let's not count the way. One thing that's coming up for me is the burden that the person carries that always has to move. Because they don't get I see them as not getting a time to integrate. So that's the one thing that landed for me. The other thing is something around before I can speak, sometimes I need a little bit of silence to move from the busyness of my mind into just letting whatever somebody say land. And when somebody else moves within that silence, it can feel very jarring to me. And I then start disengaging because I feel like the pace is going too fast. And then I will usually disengage because I haven't had that time to really let what somebody say land and see if there is a response that wants to come up organically in myself. And that is very painful for me, that dynamic of somebody moving before I'm ready. But at the same time, taking ownership that if I never feel ready, then I put the onus to move onto somebody else, and that's not always fair. Those are the things that's landing for me. And I can feel I'm triggered between that wanting to speak and wanting to be silent.
And I think for me, this experience just reminds me of a hard lockdown, you know, where most people were almost compelled to do a very deep check-in, you know, with themselves, and where you're almost compelled to deal with. There's some noise. I don't know where it's coming from. Okay. Where, yeah, it's like there's so much silence. Everything has slowed down. I was in Joburg last week. It is so calm. There isn't much movement on the road. That in that space, I'm able to see things that I wouldn't have seen before, when I was in Joburg. And yeah, it's like yeah, it's a moment of thought, because I think sometimes and I'll speak for some people, we listen to respond, you know. It's like we don't even have time to listen. But here, in this space, we're able to engage our thoughts, you know, we're able to engage our thoughts and be patient with our thoughts and be patient with what's at stake, which is why I think it's one of the most incredible tools for nation building. I mean, since '94 in South Africa, we've been moving one thing after another, one thing after another. One, it's this one and that one, and then and the other one. There's never been a moment of silence, you know, to look at this dust, because we're basically in a disaster. There was never a settling moment. In these silences, in these silent moments, is when we allow the dust to settle. Because I promise you, I've heard every point that was spelled out by each and every individual in this circle because of those silent moments.
So just to say, we've only got 8 minutes left. I would like for us each to have at least half a minute for checkout. And so I would invite those who haven't spoken, if you need to say something, to really bring your voice into the container for you, and to do so now. And then if there's anything else very briefly that needs to be said by anyone else, and then knowing that we're going to return to the space and deepen these skills, we can then go into checkout.
Yeah, thanks, Helena. I'll just give voice to what was on my mind, and that was around like the global nervous system. How I'm experiencing so much threat, not directly but indirectly, and when we talk about being frozen, I'm just wondering how much of the global stuff that's going down at the moment, especially here in UK, is actually that we've all become quite frozen. I mean, at times certainly I've experienced that frozen feeling, you know, where I don't want to move. But because I'm aware of it, I can get to realize for myself what choices that I have. And just this whole conversation just has reminded me so much around what's happening globally, you know, not just individual, because the individual is making up, I believe, the global global situation at the moment. So that's what came to mind. This, yeah, I mean, I feel very at peace in just observing, and yes, I've had thoughts moving through me, but I haven't really felt that need to articulate it. But one thing that I do realize now that I'm talking, that if all that's happening are thoughts is having an impact globally, then what is the impact individually? And I think there's a lot of threat. And what do we do when we're under threat? You know, you go and fight or you freeze, you know. So yeah, I'm observing that. I'm observing that the thoughts that are coming up for me at the moment. Yeah. Fascinating, interesting. Yeah. I'm also quite fascinated around the gender-based violence. I agree with David, you know, it happens within the feminine and the masculine. I think it's, you know, it's just what's not spoken, what's not given voice to a lot of the time. Yeah. So there could be quite a lot to be said around that. But today is, for me, certainly, is my pondering day right now.
Thank you, Tia. And I'm also just going to keep an eye on the time because we've only got 4 minutes left. So if any of the people who are for me in the bottom row, Gaia and Emma, if you want to bring something, maybe a short one. And thank you, Tia.
All right, I'll be quick. Yeah, it was occurring to me when you were talking, Helena, about when you're in silence and someone proposes a move that maybe you don't feel ready for, that there's an opportunity there, if I'm understanding this dialogic system correctly, for you to actually oppose and to say, well, I'm not comfortable right now to come out of this, and then there's an opportunity for discussion about that. I quite enjoy the times of silence, and I'm pretty comfortable with it these days. But yeah, is that right? So you could oppose?
If what I'm hearing you saying is correct, yes, you. I'm not sure what you're saying, and I'm having a major anxiety panic attack about the 3 minutes. So you can either oppose by not talking at all, or you could oppose by speaking it, saying, I don't want to talk right now. I don't agree that I should move. I don't know if that answers your question, and I think we can revisit this again next week. It feels like there's a lot of growth there.
It does.
Can I just ask a quick question? Just want to ask a quick question. I know you're running out of time. So you can oppose silently, but you can't bystand silently.
Well, what I'm saying is you could oppose by not saying anything, and I think with that I'm going to go into checkout because I need to move this thing ahead. We've got 2 minutes. So I think to tie it back to the gender-based violence, sometimes your opposition can be a silent one, and that there's can be a violence in that silence. So that wouldn't be a healthy oppose. That would be a passive-aggressive oppose. But you can oppose by not saying anything. And when you're not saying anything, it is important to check in with yourself to see, am I opposing through silence, or am I bystanding? And at what space do I need to give to the group what I'm seeing as a bystander? And what happens if I don't? So it's taking responsibility for how you are in a dialogue, rather than just being in it because you're triggered. So with that, I'm going to check out and say, thank you, everyone. I'm triggered, but luckily I know how to untrigger myself. I'm deeply grateful that you were all willing to come, willing to be vulnerable, and being here with me. So I check out with gratitude. And I'm going to pass it to Tandy.
checking out with the reflection that comes out of both Bongile and Tia's comments around lockdown and what's going on in the world, and I've been noticing how many people are checking out, and then in relation to the dialogue, noticing how whether you're moving, whether you're following, whether you're opposing, or whether you're bystanding, any of those could actually be an action that's coming from a place of checking out. And with that, thank you. And I'm passing it to Bongile.
Yeah, I Thandi, Sis Thandi. Yeah, I'm checking out with gratitude. Yeah, and then I'm taking away with me that yeah, silence is a necessary part of dialogue, which we've taken for granted for a long time. You know, maybe we must also get. I must go to research conversation. You know, what does conversation mean? You know, but yeah, with that, I am out. Yeah, thank you guys. Emma, the Krippany.
That's right. Emma checking out. Yeah, with lots of gratitude. I really enjoyed this discussion today. I'm aware that I was triggered a lot of the time. And now that I'm just, there's fatigue. I'm tired, and I feel like a little overwhelmed with all the information. Thanks. And Tia.
Yep. Aware of the time. Checking out with gratitude, and thank you, everyone. I'm out with that. David.
So I check out with a metaphor. If we're standing on the side of the river and somebody is drowning in the river, I'm going to fucking do something. Yeah, I'm not going to wait for you lot to decide if we're going to fucking rescue that person. So I check out with a fucking frustration, like fucking people are drowning there and we got to do something. And I'm grateful for your time here, but I'm fucking pissed off. Gaia.
Thanks, David. Yeah, guys, look, I'm checking out. I'm grateful. I'm happy. I'm a bit confused and curious. So I'll be back to find out more. I've seen that frustration as well at times. I'm out.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Helena, for doing this to David and Goya and Gaia.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye, guys.
See you next week.
Bye.